Hi everybody, thanks for joining us. Today I have Jemma on and she lives on the far south coast of New South Wales, not far from where I live in the Bega Valley. She lives on a really beautiful property with her little boy who's only 1 year old and her husband, and I'd probably describe the property as looking a little bit like a fairy tale, and I think that's what really resonates with her audience. She's been on Instagram for a little bit longer than 6 years, but probably really actively for 6 years. And she's got about 70,000 people following her, which I think is pretty amazing. So, yeah, that blows me away. I think that number seems hard to even imagine for a lot of people listening. And I found, I stumbled across Jemma when I first moved down to the area, and I think what I was drawn to her content is the way, like, it's so beautiful, aspirational, inspiring, and I think when I look at it, it makes me feel really calm. And that's the reason why I've got her on today, because I find that most conversations that I have with business owners who find about sort of showing up on social media about how challenging it is to show up as yourself, and that there's only space for really extroverted people. And I feel like Jemma is a really great example of being introverted and showing up as herself and being authentic, and also building a loyal following and actually getting paid work from it. So thanks for joining us today, Jemma.
Thanks so much for having me.
How's your morning been today? You've been putting your little boy down?
Yeah, it's been chaotic with him, but he's asleep now, so it's nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a lot of fun, and he's got so much energy. So he's started walking in the last week, and he's just gone round and round and round, and bumping his head and falling over and all that comes with that. But it's a lot of fun. It's a really fun stage, I'm finding.
It is. You definitely can't leave them for a second, I feel like, at this age. Like, literally every, like 5 seconds, it's like, oh, fell over, hit your head, oh, fell over.
Yeah, and things you don't even think of that he tries to climb up on, and you're just like, wow, it's a whole other world now that he's like upper level.
Yeah. So he's climbing as well.
Yeah, he is.
Wow.
He's climbing. He climbed from our bed up on top of our bedside table the other day. I was right there, but I was just like, I'm not going to be able to leave you alone for a second. But yeah, it's cute.
I actually forgot to check with you earlier. So you have a background. Do you have a degree? Is it in marketing? What was?
I did business, but I actually did HR. So there was probably like 1 or 2 classes of marketing that were really old school, didn't factor in anything about social media or anything. So I don't really have any marketing experience, but
but I don't think most people do. I think most courses can never be current enough to keep up with what's going on. You have to be learning on the job.
Yeah, that's right.
So I've got a whole bunch of questions today for Jemma that are things that I've had conversations with other business owners about that I think they'd really find value in. So let's get started. So I'd love to know a little bit about your practice and like how you go about creating the dreamy content that you create for Instagram. So the photos and video, but I guess a lot of people have questions around the video aspect because I guess it feels a little bit more complicated for people.
Well, I guess like when I think about that initially, I guess my videos have always been focused on sort of those beautiful little everyday moments, and that kind of started happening for me when I moved here and I started seeing the change in seasons and the way that impacts the way things look. Like I think we were talking recently about how the sun comes through the window like in a different way in different times a year, and it was actually because I wasn't really enjoying the winter time here. I found it really dark and miserable and cold, and so I was honestly kind of determined to romanticize that and start noticing those little things. And then along with that came just like naturally capturing it with my camera on my phone and kind of building out stories around that. So whenever I'm creating content, it tends to stem from that like place of like just noticing something in my surroundings that's really beautiful and going from there. So that's like the inspiration part, I would say. And then I guess in terms of the practicalities, like I have I have a phone, and I also use a camera and a tripod. Really basic camera. It's like the camera that my husband and I walked into, like the camera shop before we were going away to Tassie, and we're like, we'll just buy the cheapest one. So like it's nothing fancy, but yeah, I do use that as well. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any more questions about the actual process?
So I find that really interesting as far as like the driving behind it. Was that almost, it was like a positive affirmation thing. So it's finding the beauty in it, and that's what I find an interesting thread, that I have a conversation with people who are sometimes like a bit on the nose about social media, not like a bit negative about it, and saying that like everyone, when all they do is share like the positive things, and it's like not the reality. And I kind of have like for me personally, and I'd love to know your thoughts on that, for me it's actually more a process about exactly that, like that life is chaotic and sometimes sad, and you know, kids and life are hard, and do we all need to be sharing us crying on our beds all the time? I'm always looking for what is beautiful about the world, and I think that the act of looking for what's beautiful and what is good makes me feel better in myself. And so it's like a really like it's a practice that it's like a meditation in a way, rather than pretending that my life is perfect. What do you think?
Yeah, and that is exactly really what it is for me. Like it's helped me to notice those little things. Like I can be sitting on my couch and I just have this corner that I love the way the sun comes in the morning, and like on the timber and everything, and I'm not even capturing it, I'm just enjoying that. And I don't know if I would have like gotten so good at noticing those little things if I wasn't also capturing them and sharing them. And it is a balance that I often think about. Like Heath, my husband, often teases me, and he's like, wow, like people just must look at your life when they look at this and think you have the perfect life. And he's like, I know it's not that behind the scenes. And so I'm often thinking that in my mind, like how do I balance that? Like I don't want to be kind of fake or showing off, but I've gotten more comfortable in it just in the response as well. Like I get so many messages of people like saying, I just find your page so peaceful. And like I had a really lovely comment recently of someone who said, like, I go through your videos with my young daughter and we just like love watching it. And so I think like there might be some people who don't like, I guess don't like that I don't show the negative stuff, and they don't have to follow, but I know that I have people who do, like you say, it helps them to find the joy and the beautiful little moments. And so I don't know, that's just kind of what I keep doing. I certainly don't want to add any like stress or anything like that to people, but I'm also a really private, like introverted person, and I guess I don't feel too comfortable sharing like all my struggles on the internet. And I even did a reel when I had Colton. I had like a beautiful little scene that I had shot for a brand with him, and I was talking in the caption about how like I struggle to know how to portray motherhood, and so I almost just haven't, because that is the realist example to me of like you can really be struggling with it, but it also looks beautiful. But like I like capturing the beautiful because it like makes me feel good, and there's just so many layers to it.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's on the like consumer to choose like what kind of content they want to see, and if something's not making them feel good, to not follow and not consume. There's that option as well. So I don't even know what the question is. I think I've gone on a tangent.
No, you didn't at all. No, it was like a flow. It was a flow on, from there.
Okay. So it is a constant battle in my head too. But I find it really encouraging to have the beautiful little scenes, and so
me too.
Keep going with that.
And so as far as like when you are creating video content for yourself or even for clients, do you do much planning? Like you might see beautiful things that you capture, And once you've kind of seen it, do you then go, okay, if I needed to tell a story about that, do you have an idea in your head, like a plan, like the shots that you might get to tell more of a story about the brand or about what you want to share in your life?
Yeah, I do, especially with brands, because they'll often have a concept and like just like a feel that they want to get across. And so I go into it quite thought out, I guess, and because I've been doing it for quite a while, I know like the different spots in my house and like the little stories that I can create. But when it comes to my content, I'm a bit more on the fly. I do sort of like to have a bit of a plan, and I've got kind of almost like structures with my content. Like I have the structure of kind of like a morning time reel with all the bits of the mornings, or like a seasonal reel. Like I've got those structures in place that I continually reuse, but the actual individual videos within that just depend on the
I see what you mean. That's actually a really good point. I feel like that what I'm trying to pull out is that thread of like what people can take away themselves to think about creating content better. And I think that part of it is the key that I got there, is that there's an organic process, you know, for your own work, but then there's because you've been doing it for a while now, and you know also know what works, is that you know that like, okay, that a sequence of like 5 individual shots is probably a good thing, and they're a video, or I might do a carousel, and then so you've got an idea in your head. So when you're shooting for it, you are creating those 5 individual clips that you're going to need to create that reel that's that long, or those 5 still photos that would make a really good carousel because you've made them before. And so it's like not reinventing the wheel, because already creating the content is for some people is kind of like a bit of a challenge. So it's like maybe, you know, like giving, you know, advice to people would be to like maybe come up with like 3 different types of ways of reeling out content, and then maybe choosing, you know, like someone that resonates with you, and seeing what it is about their video that you like. Oh, it's got like 3 clips in it, they're about 2 seconds. Maybe I could do something like that, so that they had some guidelines in place. Otherwise it's like, where do I start?
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And I think for me, I kind of have there's 2 aspects to it. There's like the actual content side of things, and I've had it in my mind for a while that I've got 3 content pillars. I think that like little phrase, I watched a blogging course or something and she used that, it's just stuck with me. I'm like, okay, what are my 3 content pillars? And they change like over the years because my interests change, and I'm a lifestyle kind of content creator. But they're kind of like the guidelines of what kind of content that I want to share about. And then there's the actual like, format of it. And there have been times when I've been really overwhelmed, or like really just struggling with energy levels, but I'm wanting to get back into creating content, because sometimes I go extended periods of time where I don't. And I will sit down and I will think about those 3 content pillars, and then I'll like say, all right, well, every week I might post a morning moments reel, like an outfit it just gives me that framework to then be creative in amongst it. But it's like a fallback too, I guess. I don't even necessarily follow it, but I know it's there.
So I feel like having that that base, like that content pillar, I also try and use that sometimes when I'm feeling stuck. It's just about, you can do whatever you like, but if you're feeling stuck, then go back to your baseline that you've written down somewhere and go, okay, what was I doing again? Because I feel like when you do have those moments where you have extended times when you're away, I do the same thing. It's like I'm like, I'm doing it all the time. This feels great, really in the flow. And then it's like, and then nothing. And then the longer I go with not posting, then the more I'm like,
the harder it gets.
It's like, what am I going to post? No one really cares. What am I going to post? No one really cares.
That's right. And I actually created a little like a worksheet a couple months ago that I'm planning on sending to my newsletter subscribers, that's called How to Get Your Content Flow Back, because I had that same thing. I had a really long period where I hadn't posted, and for some reason it just feels so hard you're like, what do I post? Like, how do I, it's just like you're restarting again. And so I had this like procedure almost that I've started doing when that happens, and I follow it through, and it just kind of gets everything going again.
Great. So if I include your details to sign up to your emailing list at the bottom of this video, then
That'd
they might
be
be
great.
able to find out about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
that'd be great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know, like, what content do you think resonates with your audience, and why? Like, from like the comments point perspective, and also from like a data perspective, like the insights that you kind of gather from from Instagram.
Well, from a comments perspective, like I mentioned, it's that cozy, like peaceful content. I feel really like guided by that. I feel kind of lucky that I've stumbled across that kind of style and niche too, because I have really been thinking about how I have a lot of sort of maybe conflicting values with social media sometimes, like a bit of a love-hate thing. So like it makes me feel good that the content that I'm creating does give that kind of feeling to people. So I do everything under that kind of guide, I guess. I don't want to post anything that takes away from that.
Yes.
And then in terms of engagement, it is reels, and it is lots of little scenes in one reel. That's like what will always do well, I think. I think I post like still photos and maybe reels that have a little bit less going on because I like them and for my followers. But when it comes to like reach and the most engagement, it is those little scenes, I guess. And like a story in a reel, it's not quite so obvious that it's a story, but you do like bring those storytelling elements in, and like I think like lots of movement and lots of like different angles and different, I don't know, it's just, it keeps people engaged and interested.
And do you find like you try to do a mix of where things are moving within the frame and you've got the camera on a tripod, and then also moving the camera? Yeah,
so I think mixing up almost like everything, like a shot with like moving, like you've got the kettle pouring, and then just a shot of like a stiller shot, and then like a shot of just the cup and the kettle, and then a shot of like the whole scene, like lots of different changes within it, which maybe sounds complicated, but it's actually really easy when you get into the swing of it, because you've got your one scene and you just I don't know.
You're kind of pulling into pieces. Yeah, it's like you kind of find that. That's what I always tell people in my courses, that you don't have to have. People think you have to have this incredible space and everything has to look beautiful, but you just like you have these little nooks. Yeah. And again, it depends on the season. Like this area over here looks great. This area over here looks great, and then you're just repeating it. Yeah. And using that same scene, but putting different things into the scene, because you know the light's great, rather than kind of going, you know, like where am I going to shoot again and again?
Yeah, that's right. And also to clarify with the engaging reels, like I made it seem like it's all of the cup and the kettle. You also have to change, like I think having people in the shot and then just objects, that's also something you have to change as well. That was just kind of an example of the different angles. But yeah, I definitely do that. I have this spot where I am that if I want to share like an outfit, I always stand in it because I know the light's really good and I like the way it looks, so may as well like use that instead of trying to constantly reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, because it's another complication. I think it adds in. That's what people. I just watch people how they get themselves into a bit of a freak out mode about it, and it's because they're trying to like think of the the template they're going to use, the content, the lighting, the new scene. It's like, and from the perspective of it makes what we do seem really easy, but it's only because we're redoing the same things in a formula that we know works.
Yeah. That's right. And you're changing elements to make it interesting. But yeah, having that go-to. And there was a long time when I was living in this place, and this like room was like a shed basically. And like I really only had certain little corners, and I used that. I used those little corners, and you probably wouldn't have even like realized how little aesthetic space there was in my place, but I created these little corners because they kind of made me happy, but also helped with my content. And so you really don't need much, you just preferably need a window.
Yes, I agree. And as far as when you show up in the scenes, in the videos, whether you're recognisable or not, do you find that creates more reach and more engagement, or not necessarily?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it makes I guess I've never thought of it quite like that, but I think it makes the reel more interesting.
Yes.
And it helps that story. And so I like to show up.
Yes.
Not necessarily like, my content. I'm not really fully showing up. And I guess that then translates into engagement and reach, I think, as well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I kind of try and advocate for that as well, even though I know it's what people makes them feel uncomfortable, but it's not about showing up and, like we spoke about before, dancing on screen or just being like silly. You don't have to be someone that you're not. If you're silly,
you can just find the way that you feel comfortable doing it and do it. Like, I'm sure I could probably maybe engage with people more if I was talking to the camera more and more open, but I'm just not really there at this point. And so I'm just making it work with what I feel comfortable doing. Yeah.
And the thing is it's working. If you weren't seeing engagement and you weren't seeing growth from the way that you post, then obviously it's not working, but it is working, because I think
That's
people
true.
need to have space for other types of content that is slow, because they feel tired and exhausted by the overstimulation that you see.
Oh, that's like a whole other thing is like with my confliction of values, like I'm like, we're not made to see this much stimulus in one day. Like it's got to add to the overwhelm and the fatigue.
I know that conflict of values versus showing up for work and also for your passion. I completely, I would.
Don't perfectly match up.
No, absolutely not. And I think you just try and do the best you can to sort of bridge that gap between the two. There's a lot of, ethically, a lot of things that, or most of the things I don't agree with, as far as who owns, Instagram and all those types of things. And the more you kind of learn about how that all works, and politically it's kind of like, oh wow, am I contributing to this? What does this all mean? But unfortunately it really is a space, it's already been built, and it's a space where we are able to connect with so many amazing creatives. And I've got to meet people like you, and we've met in person, and I feel like the same thing, if you can, I guess, self-regulate when you need to have space away from it. I think most of the time I've had so many great outcomes from being involved in a space rather than negative ones. So
and I think it is just about being really intentional about your use of it as well. Being aware of the downsides of it and balancing that, not just going along with it, I guess.
I think checking in all the time, is this making you feel uncomfortable? Do I feel yuck when I follow this account? Okay, so then don't do it.
That's right. Because when you think about it, the people you follow, if you're checking your account every single day, you're choosing to see those people and what they're posting every single day. And not that that's a bad thing, but when you just think of it from a life standpoint, would we usually check in with that many people every single day and see that many things? They're not even necessarily bad. I only follow people or brands that I like, but it's a lot to be checking in with every day.
Yes. And I just imagine turning up and going, hi, because you've got 70,000 people on you, hi, 70,000 people, what are you all doing today? It's
huge.
It's so much. I know. I always like reading when people remind you, when they say, you're talking about your email list or something, and maybe 5 people have signed up in the last month, and it's or 20 people have, or something like that, and it's that doesn't seem like much when people have got tens of thousands of people on the email list, but it's 10 or 20 people have just literally given you their thing and said it's okay that you contact me. That is massive.
That is, and if you actually pictured them as people,
exactly, yes,
it would
in a room,
seem much bigger.
Because imagine talking in front of 20 people. Most of us would be like, oh, I'm freaking out.
Exactly.
So I would love to know your thoughts, I guess, as far as figuring out any advice on creating content that kind of resonates with your audience, for people who are still figuring out, like I feel like because you've been doing it for quite a while, you sort of figured it out as you went, and maybe because you kind of came about it from a position of just of doing things without having like a business model initially, and now you do. If people have already got like a business, how they kind of like figure out, do they just do what feels good for them, or like any advice you'd have for people for creating content that resonates with their audience but still feels okay?
Yeah. I guess maybe two things. One is to like find a style, an aesthetic, all of those things that resonates with you, but also like matches with your brand, whatever that might be, and really stick to it. Like you can play around with it as well, but I think that when content is just like really on brand and just recognizably that person's content, that then you're right, people are going to be drawn to that. And also if you're too all over the place, then if someone resonates with the reel and then go to your page and it's all over the place, they're not going to hang around. So like I know that's like a pretty obvious one, but just when I think about the accounts that really stand out to me at the moment, they have a really strong aesthetic, I guess. And that doesn't mean like necessarily heavily editing, but it's just creating that visual look around what they're posting. I think you can do that through color palettes, you can do that through lighting, like all different ways.
Yes.
And then probably similar to that is to think about maybe like the feeling that you want people to have with your content, and that plays into the aesthetics as well. But I think that feeling and emotion and connection is really what is behind engaging content, and what draws people in. Like if they like the feeling that they get when they're watching your content, they're going to come back for more. So I've been thinking a lot about that lately, is like what kind of feeling do I want people to have with my content? And also when thinking about helping brands is, yeah, that feeling, and then how you can, like, it's very subtle. I'm not saying like it has to be really obvious, or like, and in the marketing sense, it can be really obvious and often negative. But I think with social media, it can be like really subtle and like a positive feeling. I don't know if that's
it does.
Clear.
No,
yeah,
it
I've
is
been
clear.
thinking a lot about how like the aesthetic like lines up with the feeling, and just different editing styles to create different feelings. I think you can combine the two. And I think that just means that you're right, people that are looking for that are going to come to you.
I agree with the feeling part. I think like once you get people at that heart thing, you're not making logical things, and I think people are drawn to to that over kind of a strategy completely made from our intellect. Because it's like you kind of like, your body knows when someone is, even if they're really good at marketing. I feel like you kind of know, like, okay, this just feels like disingenuous kind of thing. And it kind of repels you. Like some people, of course, I think can balance those things really well with like a level of like really smart thinking on how to kind of get people to buy things or purchase things, and also balancing the feeling as well. But I think for a lot of us, coming from that feeling perspective, if we don't have like a degree in marketing, because
it gives it a bit of like soul as well. And it also helps dictate like the choices that you make. I think what people, like you were saying, struggle with reels and social media is there's just so many decisions to make. And when you're already running a business, that's just like so overwhelming, like even just choosing music and all that kind of thing. And if you're going for like a certain feeling, then like that dictates all those other choices. Like for me, it's that peaceful, cozy feeling. That doesn't have to be it. It could be like, it could be inspiring or like relatable, like so many different things. But with me and the cozy, that means that I don't ever choose music that's like really blary and loud, and I don't like make the clips so short that it's like stressful to watch. Like it's all around that feeling.
That's a really good point, because I feel like that when you talk about that decision fatigue as a business owner and how creating videos does really amp up that, because there are so many steps in the process to getting there, that if you are going into it like, okay, this is my feeling and where I sit in that, then it's like the music choices, suddenly it's like you're not looking at a million music choices, you might be looking at 10,000 different music choices. And if you like the colours, it's like, well, this, and again, the length of the clip, how long do I have it go in the timeline for? Are they 3 seconds or 5 seconds long? Well, I liked mine to be really fast and punchy, so I'm going to have mine a second long. Or no, I think my brand is more slow and mindful, and so I think 3 seconds is long enough that it needs to be so people can process it. So I think it's really good advice. That makes complete sense. Yeah, I like it.
Sometimes I worry I'm overthinking it, but
no, not at all, because I feel like that it sounds really simple when you just say, oh, just go with your feeling, but I think when you break it down to actually how it affects and narrows down the decisions that you make each step of the way, then I think that's easy for people to understand why understanding the feeling is important, rather than being necessarily like woo-woo sounding. Yeah,
true.
I'd love to know some tips. I know that you've got around balancing like boundaries with creating content in your life, because I think when I'm not shooting client stuff, I also sort of shoot things within my life and my garden and my kids, and I'm always sort of figuring out where that line is, and that's always shifting. And sometimes I feel like I go too far, because again, I think when you do you have that mindset where you're always seeing beauty, it's really hard not to shoot it. But also it's like about being present as well. So do you try and, like, maybe there's two different answers for what you create for yourself and what for your clients, but do you try and have like set days or time slots for creating things for your clients versus if you are shooting stuff just for yourself, you just capture things as you see the beautiful moments?
It's a good question. Because, boundaries in that time sense is something I have struggled with over the years, especially because before I had Colton, I was working full time. I was doing content for brands and I was trying to grow my following, and it just felt like I was constantly doing some form of work. And so I have had to. I would like, especially with Colton, to get to a point where I do have my certain days where I'm doing certain things, but I don't have enough of a schedule just in life in general to pull that in.
I think that's most people, but so keep going.
But so when I think about boundaries, I think I kind of went over it a little bit with like my content pillars and then my content plan. That kind of helps me to know, like, well, these are the things I post about. If I'm doing something that's not that, I'm not taking photos of it unless I really, really want to. So that kind of helps with that. And then I do like having some kind of a plan. I'm saying that as I don't have a plan currently at the moment.
I know, but
because if I decide when I create my month's plan that I'm only going to post maybe 3 or 4 times a week, well then once I've got that ready, then it's kind of like a sigh of relief, and it's like, well, I don't have to, again, unless something is really like pretty, but like it doesn't take long to just take a little shot. For me, it's more the thinking about then, like, well, is it going in a reel, and then do I take more photos, and then like that's probably more the bit that can consume you a little bit. So I think having a baby, I've naturally found some boundaries because I simply haven't had the time. But having those plans and those structures in place means that when you're outside of that, you don't have to worry about it.
Yes, you have downtime. Yeah. And so do you, segueing onto that, which is not really one of the questions, so you try, when things are going well, do you try to schedule things in advance if you can?
I don't necessarily schedule them, but I like to be a little bit ahead, knowing that I've got some content planned. So the
ideas.
Yeah, the ideas. And then even I'm often not posting on the day that I took it. So if I'm a little bit ahead of that, I feel better about it. I don't know where I'm going.
No, I know. So and another question I have was so you've got the pre-planning part, and then as far as the editing and things go of reels, again, this is another complaint that I hear people say, and I know sometimes I equally do the same thing, like probably more when I don't plan things as well as I should, and I'm editing a reel, and then I'm like an hour in, and I'm like, what am I doing? How did I get here? Like I actually create video content for clients, and I'm like working on this tiny screen, and then I get super frustrated, and I'm like, that's it. And then I sometimes, upload my files onto my desktop and just like, because I can actually get in and just do it so quickly on a desktop than what I can on a phone, because like it's so tiny.
Yes, I wish that it was better to create. I wish that you could create a reel on the desktop in the exact same way that you can on the phone.
Absolutely.
Because you feel like you're like, oh,
yes,
that's awful.
Yeah. It's just like,
so I typically, like, I shoot one day and then I edit and create the reel another day, and for some reason that separation kind of helps me a little bit, whereas if I'm doing it all in the same day, I just start, I don't know, you just kind of like get
too screen time. Too much screen time.
Yeah, exactly. And if possible, I like to edit a few reels in the same time. So another thing with, I think we were talking about maybe boundaries and time and things that I found really helpful. Like when I plan too, I don't necessarily plan exactly, but I'll plan, okay, I have an outfit that I'd like to share, and then I have a recipe that I'd like to share, and then I'd really like to do like a little morning moments video and maybe some still photos in between. And so on that one day, I film my outfit, I film the recipe, I film a few other little clips and take photos as I'm going. And then all of a sudden I've got a reel that's my outfit, I've got a reel that's the recipe, and then I've got a reel that's the little moments that has my outfit in, a few little shots of the recipe, and then there's got to be other things as well, but that I've shot. And then you've got still photos that you've been taking as you go as well. So if you do a little bit of pre-planning in that sense, you can make it take up less of your life, I guess.
I love that. Yes.
I don't know if that's inauthentic to
no, I don't,
because you're
think
posting it on different days, but I think the way Instagram has become too is people are reusing content in different formats, and people, like, I love seeing reels where like maybe someone's gone on a countryside trip and then you see those same clips in a little thing about autumn, and like I actually quite like that. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah, the way Instagram has kind of evolved, I think you can really use that to your advantage.
Yes, yeah. No, I really like that advice with how much you can kind of capture in one session. I advocate for the same thing, just to make people feel like that it's like, I think batching anything, like what you said about when you start editing a reel, you just kind of get into a flow rather than like, you're doing something completely different, like you're in the garden, you're coming in, you're trying to cook dinner, and then you're trying to edit a reel, and then you go back to doing something else. Like that kind of jumping from one thing to another means that, like, I think you're very inefficient with the way with your skill level and your time. Yeah,
I agree.
I'd love to know what creative projects that you have that you'd like to explore next, Jemma.
Yeah, so I have, I'm creating content for a few different brands as I go, but something that I'm working on is a bit of I don't know if it's going to be like a program that people work through in a set time, or if it's just going to be a course that like is evergreen and available. But just like it's a Reels course, I guess, but
Amazing.
It's drawing in that like finding your visual aesthetic, how to edit and film to like match that aesthetic, and then the actual ins and outs of all the decisions that you make with Reels, and a little bit on growth too, because even though that's not my main thing, I know everyone's always like interested in growth.
Yes, yeah.
And then the organization. So I've kind of got it all laid out. I just have to figure out what format it's going to be in. So I'm quite excited about that. And then I'm just working on some free worksheets and things for my email list as well in the same kind of categories.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, so that's my main thing that I'm working on.
And do you try to like set aside like a specific time each week to do it, or just whenever you can? Yeah.
It's more of a whenever I can at the moment, just nap times and different things, because I do work as well 2 afternoons a week. So just whenever I can, but my goal with everything is to get to a point where I have my days where I do certain things. But at the moment, it's just whenever I can.
Yes, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, yeah, that's what kids do to you. Oh, well, thank you so much, Jemma, for coming on. Like, I really appreciate your time and energy, and I think I was a bit nervous about asking Jemma to come on, because I also am very aware that, which is why I invited you on in the first place, is that she does like to keep quite private, and, you know, I don't want to kind of push past boundaries. And so, yeah, I just feel really grateful that you're willing to show up and have a chat to me, because I also get really nervous doing these interviews. We had this conversation before we started recording, just that like you have, you know, all the things in your head because it's your information, but then when someone asks you a question, how that just slips your mind. And I feel the same way being the person interviewing, is that I want to ask a question, I'm listening, and then I go to ask a question and then it disappears. And so it's like like these things, I think when you're watching them, seem like they're really easy, but I think they're often not, and we both get really nervous, but we made it and we showed up anyway. So it's just showing that you don't have to be loud and extroverted to do it. And I think people also think that I'm like extroverted, and I'm actually not really. Like I get really nervous about public speaking, and I'm really great with like a couple of people, but sort of showing up in a large group, or even showing up knowing that there's like a big audience that might be watching even online, I picture all those people, and that makes me feel really anxious. So yeah.
Well, you're such a natural, because I certainly would have thought you're an extrovert.
I think was there saying like an introverted extrovert or something? It's like sometimes I can be there, and then other times I need to be in my shell, otherwise I feel really depleted. So so all this is just saying is that I think there's all versions of ways to show up online, and you don't have to be really loud to make it work, and I think Gemma's proof of that. So I'll include all her details. Her Instagram is Moments by Jemma, and I'll also include a link to her mailing list so that you can sign up and get first dibs on her course that she's creating, which I think is going to be really beautiful. Yeah, so thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks, Jemma.